All right, so I wanted to do a bit of a follow-up to my semi-series that I've sort of been doing on my Becker BK knives. Now, I've recently passed the magic 1,000 subscribers monetization threshold, and I find myself faced with a bit of a conundrum going forward that we'll talk about today. But it starts with, and I've mentioned this before, the fact that my far and away most watched video, despite all of the other content I've put out in the last couple of years, is still the part 2 of me comparing the K-Bar USMC Classic to my BK collection, which included the BK2, the BK7, the BK10, and I threw in my daughter's BK9. Now, this is also my most disliked and criticized video, and some of that has bled over into other reviews I've done of fixed blade knives, which is going to fold into my conundrum that we'll talk about later towards the end. But it all comes down to the same flavor, that there's a lot of folks out there that feel like I don't love those knives appropriately because they don't look like I've been batoning concrete with them. And we'll talk about batoning concrete today. Let's talk about the why they don't. I did a follow-up video about that BK7 that I've had for over 10 years and why it still looks almost brand new. And the reason is, well, one, I'm more of a collector, so I take care of my collection. But two, and the major reason is, I'm just not that guy. I don't have that life. The last 20 years I've been working the same job. I don't get the opportunity to have anything resembling regular vacations. I haven't been out camping in over 2 decades. So you're not going to see me do wilderness bushcraft survival stuff. So it's just not something you're going to see on my channel. It's going to be part of that conundrum. So what kind of use do my knives get to? Well, the life I have, especially the life I've had in the last couple of years, I almost never get out of this box full of sharp objects, except maybe to get a little time in the yard, like I'm in Supermax, or get down to the store to buy groceries, and that's about it. So again, what use do the knives get put to? Well, use around the office, work site, and use around the house. In this day and age of online shopping and delivery, a lot of it is cutting up, packaging and tape and cardboard and strapping and cord and stuff like that. Though you've also seen me occasionally get out and, I'll do a little wood carving, a little light yard work. And I'm talking light because there are no trees in my yard, no full-size trees in my yard. But you've also seen me break up old furniture with some of my bigger knives. Yeah, stuff like that. And I've discovered that the finish on the BK knives holds up pretty well to those kind of materials. But anything harder, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, in that follow-up video on the BK7, I threw out a poll. And the poll was, do you all want to see me do destructive testing on that knife? And as of this recording, unanimously, you've all said no. And I was not prepared for that. It's a pleasant surprise. Thank you all for responding and kind of restoring my faith that I guess a lot of my audience are knife collectors. And then that'll get back to the conundrum later. And maybe the results will change over time as my audience shifts. But, all right, if I wasn't going to destroy the knife, I mentioned that, okay, I'll try to do some upgrades, and we're going to talk about grips today. But I also did a video on the BK10 that was a follow-up, because in that part 2 video, that initial video on the Beckers, I complained a lot about that second generation finish that compared to the earlier smooth finish, I described as being like rhino liner, really coarse and awful and high friction and, yeah, really fragile. So in that follow-up, talked about stripping the finish off, and apparently I did it the hard way using a wire wheel. Some other people have just soaked this thing in solvent for a while to take it is pretty much like thick paint. Did some reprofiling and some customization to, change the blade shape more to my liking, and I blued it, and yes, indeed, liked the blade a lot better, to the point where I felt like the BK7, maybe investing in it more, starting with, hey, new grip scales. Let's talk about those. Of the things I don't like about the Beckers, number one are the stock grips, those smooth, cheap looking and feeling, plasticky. I know they call them Ivory or Grivex, but they're plastic. Scales. And I've also mentioned that the price of those knives has gone way up since I bought mine. But they still come with, yeah, these things that I hate. And they make the knife feel terrible in hand. What about these? They're awesome. This is a great upgrade. How much did I wind up paying for it? Well, this is the natural color. If you want them in different kind of dye jobs, different colors, they're currently running on Amazon between, say, 40 and 45 bucks. The natural ones cost me 35. I don't really mind the color. If I did, apparently you can re-dye them easily with common fabric textile RIT dye, and it works just fine. I've seen examples of it. So if I ever decide to do that, it's an easy job. A little messy, but cheap and doable. But so far, yeah, the way, not only are they much grippier, but they significantly change the overall feel of the knife. Obviously the balance as well, because they're denser than the plastic. But yeah, just the overall feel and handling of the knife feels like a much, much, much higher quality product. I think it's a great investment, but it aggravates me that these don't come as a stock option. Even if I had to pay a little bit more to have these scales on the knife out of the box. Guys, come on. It makes, but no, I've got to buy them separately. But you can, they're available. So hey, so I got a pair for this, I got a pair for the BK7. Now, didn't get a pair yet for the BK2, and the reason for that is, of my 3 BKs, I haven't connected as much with the BK2 because it feels kind of thick and chunky in my hand, and maybe a lot of that's the grip. But I was recently cutting up some big appliance boxes, you know, the ones with the big staples in them, and I was using the BK2, and when it made contact with those staples, it gouged the surface. So I figured, okay, well, the surface has some gouges in it. It's no longer pristine. I figured I'd take it. Well, those are a little dinged up, but now really not pristine. Looked like somebody keyed my car in many ways in terms of the knife finish. But okay, I figured I'd take it out. Let's do it. I didn't film it because it was very cringy for me. But I went digging for some roots in the yard. Dug out some roots, and then I went digging in some big bins full of, well, it's not really soil, it was mostly gravel. And then I used the knife to chop up some clay pots, because that makes good, you know, drainage bottoms for planters, the lower level for drainage. So I did a bunch of that, and then I had some cinder block that I felt needed a little reshaping. So yeah, I chopped some cinder block, and then before I was done, there was an old metal wire box spring, the remnants of a box spring sitting out in the yard. So I figured I'd just whack on that a little bit to see how much damage the blade could do to that wire. And the answer was not a lot. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot. But how much damage did all of that do to the knife? You guys ready? Now, I expect that the appearance of this knife will make some of those critics of mine very happy. Does it make me happy? No, but actually yes, because, all right, let's talk about how much damage was done to the edge. Again, chopping clay pots and cinder blocks and, you know, rocky soil and other things that you basically really should be doing with a shovel, not a knife. Now, you probably can't see any significant gouges in there. Neither could I. There's a few semi-visible ones. How bad are they? I'll take another blade and scrape it. Okay, you can. It's certainly not a razor blade. It's not smooth at all anymore. It's pretty ragged and chewed up, but not bad. Not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. This is an easy fix. Should not be too bad to rehome, reprofile. Yeah. But the finish is trashed. But like I said, the finish is fragile. I could take another knife and literally just scrape it off like paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the knife out, and it'll be a quick cut for you, probably a couple hours or more for me. I'll let you know. I'll strip this finish off like I did with the BK10. I'll clean it up. I'll polish it up. I'll redo that edge, consider maybe what other changes, modifications I might want to do to it. And then we'll come back and see if this is worth maybe investing in those new scales for. So Be back in a flash. All right, it's been a couple of days. This took longer than I thought it would. And before I started, I didn't feel like I had mangled the edge quite enough, so I went out and chiseled at the edges of some concrete walkway slabs a little bit. And then I took it to some cardboard, and at that point, no, it wouldn't cut the cardboard anymore. It kind of ripped through it like an old, rusty, dull crosscut saw. So I think appropriate level of damage done for the experiment. Now, between the edge damage and the surface damage, I did start on my large bench 4x36 sander at 180 grit, and I worked my way down to, up to, in this case, 800 grit before I took it over to my 1x30 belt sander, which is kind of like an oversized work sharp, to finish it up, re-edge it, polish it up, and then I blued it, let that cure overnight, cleaned off the oxidation, oiled it, and result is a knife I think I like better than it was before. And as you can see, while I was at it, I did add a finger choil, because Mike loves his finger choils, and that does allow me to choke up on the blade really nice for close work. I also thinned out the handle scales a little bit more because this is a thick, beefy beast, and I don't have the largest hands. But let's go ahead and look at paper cutting. Yeah, it's definitely been... Now, there are still some little nicks and gouges in the blade. I didn't manage to get them all out, but I seem to have definitely restored it to a level where it cuts well again. Now, being a thick blade, it's not the sliciest thing, so on something like cardboard, yeah, its width, its thickness is going to cause some resistance. But I feel like I've also got a smoother surface to work with now that it's polished and blued. Kind of like that BK2. I like it better this way. So I think the experiment in that sense was worth it. I appreciate this knife a lot more, A, knowing how much abuse it will take, or I mean, I didn't outright try to break it, and I'll post a picture because there is a concern about the Becker design that some reviewers have had. Underneath these handle scales, it is somewhat skeletonized. There are cutouts in there that some people are afraid are potential failure points. Now, again, I didn't try to break the knife in half or something, didn't try to snap it, but I did treat it like a cheap hatchet and a shovel, and it's not made for that. But I think it handled that abuse and recovered from it, at least with the skills I have, pretty well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was this a worthwhile experiment to do? Was it too cringe-inducing? Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what your experiences are with Becker knives or other knives that are similar. I might consider some other knives, but that gets me to that conundrum I mentioned. Again, I get a lot of criticism because I might not be the guy to be out there doing the hardcore abuse and woodcraft and survival stuff with knives like this. So I'm not sure I'm going to continue to do any reviews of fixed blade knives because I just don't know if I'm giving anyone useful information in the knife community. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would like to see. And again, I appreciate our conversation in the comments. So honestly, let me know what you think I should do in terms of future direction knife-wise. But otherwise, as usual, thank you everyone for watching and liking the videos and subscribing and joining that conversation in the comments. And I hope to see you back for, well, wherever I go from here.